Welcome to today's video, which is going to be a ranking video of all the eyeshadow palettes that I've tried so far in 2023. Now, there are going to be some palettes that are not featured in here that you might have already seen videos go up with. I had to cut it off at a certain point, so those will be included in the palette ranking for the rest of the year. So this is up until about end of June, so let's get right into it. I do have 23 palettes to rank, and I do want to mention, just because there are some that are on the bottom doesn't mean that they're bad palettes. It is honestly mostly going to come down to personal preference, whether or not it's all mattes, all shimmers, the color story, and the formula, of course, but none of these have a bad formula. So number 23 is the Moonfall Shroud Cosmetics palette. I love Shroud's other palettes, specifically the pastel palettes. However, this one for me was just too many deeper mattes as well as deeper shimmers, which is not really my vibe. And also, I do prefer a more sparkly, shiny, shifty shimmer shadow, and this shade right here, Devotion, was really the only one, the most sparkly. So I really just wasn't wowed by the shimmers in here, and that's why it is ranking the lowest for you. So you can kind of see this one is definitely the absolute shiniest, and this darker shimmer is just not really something I gravitate to. I'm definitely more likely to gravitate to something like this. In 22nd place is the Seahorse palette from Adept Cosmetics. I was very excited for it. This is an expensive palette. I did a whole dedicated video on this one, and I did do tons and tons of swatch comparisons, so definitely check it out if you're interested in this palette. And to me, it's just not worth it. Are some of the shimmers in here nice? Yes. But there's also some in here that are just really not it. Specifically this one right here, and even these, like, they're nice, but they kind of end up looking a bit too satin for my liking on the lid. So I'm not a huge fan of that, just not my preference. And then also the fact that there's two almost identical shades in here. I did kind of compare these on the lid, and they're almost the same. So this one came in second to last because I just feel like it's really not worth the money. Otherwise, I do love that this is an all shimmer palette. I also did mention in my video that I kind of wish this was split into two to make it maybe a little bit more affordable. And you might not want to make such an investment into just an all shimmer palette. Obviously, these are multi-chromes and shifty and special shadows. Next up is the Hadron Collider palette from Malvita, and this is an amazing graphic artist that I found on Instagram a while ago, and she launched her own brand, and this is the very first eyeshadow palette that she launched with it. I have a dedicated video on this one. While I love the brighter mattes in here, the brighter colors overall, and how it matches the outer packaging, the shimmers in here are just a little bit too soft for me in terms of they're just not really sparkly up to my preference. The shade right here is really the most shiny out of all of them. The rest of them are just like a really nice, smooth, metallic, reliable metallic formula, which there's nothing wrong with that. It's just not my preference. In 20th place is the Citrus Punch palette from Simply Posh Cosmetics, and I did post a video with this one pretty recently. The main reason it's ranked so low is not because of the formula per se, it's because one, some of the shimmers do hard pan almost immediately, and they're really hard to pick up, but also because some of the mattes are just way too close in tone. While they might seem like they're far apart, when you put them on the lid, they look extremely similar, and there is no depth in this one, and that's why it's ranking so low. Next up is the Cosmos palette from ABH Cosmetics. I was very intrigued when I saw this launch because it looked like it has some really nice shimmers in here. This one unfortunately came broken. This is definitely quite a bit more amped up for ABH. They're not really necessarily known for some like shiny sparkly shimmers or really duochromes. They may have had some here and there. They have an amazing formula, and I just feel like some of the shimmers in here were a little bit lacking. Specifically this one right here, I mentioned how it has a bunch of flecks of glitter throughout it, and it looks just extremely patchy, and they don't distribute evenly, and they kind of just blend away. So I just feel like this shade is kind of useless, and I wish the other shimmer shadows were more like this formula or this formula. And then of course we have a Galaxy Matte black matte shadow with sparkles in it, and I went on a whole rant about that in my video because I just find these shades kind of useless. I wish it was just a matte black. But this palette definitely makes me intrigued to see what else ABH will be launching in the future. I feel like this is a sign that they might be kind of gravitating a little bit more towards maybe the duochrome, shifty, shiny trend. Next up is the Vanity Makeup palette. I don't have a dedicated video on this one, but I did try it off camera, and this basically I bought because I really like the row of mattes, and I like the assortment of the mattes in here, and the fact that I could deepen it up with these two shades out here. Particularly these three just looked extra shiny and sparkly, and I was really intrigued and I wanted to try them. They are a little bit more topper-like. This one over here you can tell is totally different kind of texture. So I just wanted to try it out because I do enjoy it and I think it's a great just kind of go-to neutral palette. Next up is the Trove palette from Money Cosmetics. I did a dedicated video where I did some eye swatches as well as swatch comparisons. And the reason this one is ranking so low is because one, these shadows do crease on me, and two, I have so many similar shades. The only shade that is a bit more unique to my collection is this one right here, but everything else I can pretty much dupe with my single shadows. Next up is the Evergreen palette from Lethal Cosmetics. This one launched, I believe, like towards the beginning of the year, and they really have amped up their shimmers, and I already love their mattes. So this overall is a really nice quality palette. I would like to say that these two shadows are pretty similar. Probably didn't need to have both of them in here. The mattes are really nice, and I do have a video. I believe I did 1 or 2 looks with this one. I don't remember exactly. The color story is nice, but I do actually a little bit more prefer the Metamorphosis palette from them. So this one is coming in just a little bit before then. I think it's a nice balance of shimmers and mattes. And again, I really enjoy their matte shadows, and the shimmers have been quite spectacular from them as of recent. So I'm happy to see them improving. Onto the Stone and Rock palette from Odin's Eye. I totally lost track at what number I'm at now, but this is just a really nice grungy green kind of color story. Is it the most unique? Not really. I've definitely seen something like this before, and that is why it is ranking here. There is a black base multi-chrome down here. It's actually maybe a little less black base, but it is just like a jeweled kind of multi-chrome. And then the shade right here is also really beautiful, super shiny, and I do have a dedicated video on this one. Then we have the Don't Be Jelly palette. I love the color story of this one. Love the assortment of the matte shadows, and the shimmers are really beautiful as well. Some of them do hard pan, unfortunately. I really do wish that wasn't such an issue with Unearthly anymore. So that being said, you might just have to dip in with your brushes instead of your fingers to avoid any sort of hard panning. But again, I enjoy this palette. I do have a dedicated video on it, and I love the color story, and that is why it is starting to rank a little bit higher. Next up is the Aurora Struck palette from ColourPop. I do not have a dedicated video on this one. Let me know if you're interested in one. It might be too late, and this palette was gifted to me by ColourPop, and I really like this color story. Some of the shimmers in here are definitely a bit more amped up, specifically this one right here. I featured it in a reel, and it's just got that extra little sparkle. It feels a little bit textured, and just some of these other shadows are just a little bit nicer. This one right here as well, it just feels a little bit more amped up. There are of course some more satin shades like this one right here, which to me, not my favorite, but overall I do enjoy this palette. Almost in the top 10, we've got number 11, and that is the Nomad Royal Europe palette. I was so excited to see this palette coming out because I absolutely love the assortment of the mattes in here. And I love seeing Nomad put some multi-chromes in their palettes, and of course the imprints are really beautiful. I really had a great time, and I enjoyed this palette. The mattes are really beautiful, and the shimmers are in this one as well. I think they knocked it out of the park. And of course the packaging is 10 out of 10 as always. Coming in at number 10 is the Natasha Denona Yucca palette. And this one I did a dedicated video on, and this one has some beautiful shimmers in here, and I love the grungy color story. It's not ranking any higher because I'm honestly not a huge fan of this deeper cream to powder matte. I just feel like it didn't really perform the way I was expecting it and wanting it to. And also these two shades do look a little bit similar on the lid, but otherwise it is a beautiful color story, beautiful formula, and I really hope to see more shimmer shadows in this kind of formulation from Natasha Denona. Coming in 9th place is the Sugar Drizzle Don't Forget to Smile palette. This is an all shimmer shadow palette, definitely perfect for spring and summer. This palette is full of some really beautiful, super sparkly topper-like shadows. Let me just kind of swatch a couple of them. Super beautiful. I mean, look at that. There's also some smoother shadows in here, so these are like kind of these shades over here. So I think I did 2 or 3 looks with this palette and had a great time. So I love the assortment of the shadows in here. I love that there are some more topper-like, more shiny ones, as well as some smoother ones. So that's why it's ranking in the number 9 spot. Next up is the Into the Night palette from Glam Cosmetics. Look at this packaging, super beautiful. They always knock it out of the park with their color stories. I absolutely love this one. There's some duochromes and multi-chromes in here as well. Love the shadow down here especially. It's just like a beautiful grungy green, kind of orangey reddish reflecting shadow. And then this one is also super stunning and super shiny. And this one is just so magical, like a galaxy in an eyeshadow. And of course the mattes are super pigmented, so overall, just really enjoy this palette. In 7th place is the Adept Cosmetics Plain Jane Remastered. I believe this is the 3rd time they've remastered this palette. This is a new formula in here. They also switched out a couple of the shadows. I did a dedicated video where I did some swatch comparisons to the original Plain Jane. So there's some kind of smoother type of multi-chromes, as well as some shiny sparkly sheer. So you can kind of see the difference in formulation, which I do really like that, especially in an all shimmer palette, because I think it's nice to add a little bit of variety on textures, but these are just beautiful shimmers, and I love the original as well. In 6th place is the Lure palette from Blend Money Cosmetics. This one is a little bit of a smaller palette from them. I believe there's kind of one less column missing. And these shimmers are truly, truly amped up. I mean, they really have improved their shimmer formula because these are just so, so beautiful. Mattes are pigmented as always. There's some nice depth and variation between pastels, midtones, and deep mattes. I don't have a dedicated video on this palette, but I do plan on doing one. I'm not sure exactly when I'll get to it. And until then, I have been pairing this palette with some of my single shimmer shadows. Place is the Clionadh Deep Sea Treasures palette. This is an all shimmer palette. I love how compact it is. I love that there's 8 shades, and these are just truly spectacular, high quality, beautiful shimmer shadows. Saltwater Pearl has honestly become one of my most favorite kind of formulas from them. It is just absolutely stunning. And then Cephalopod is just beautiful, dimensional kind of shimmer, super sparkly. And Ring of Fire is also super magical and really vibrant and beautiful. So this palette is just 10 out of 10. Love the color assortment. I could have probably done without the shade Shipwreck, but overall, I do really enjoy this palette. In 4th place is the Wildflower palette from Lethal Cosmetics. This palette just really surprised me because it has some stunning, super smooth, really beautiful, still very shiny, but like trustworthy kind of formula of shimmers in here. Really beautiful color assortment. And I love the mattes. Of course, as I mentioned, I love Lethal Cosmetics mattes, but especially love the assortment in here. I just feel like you can get so many looks out of this one. And after I did the video with this palette, I just found myself really wanting to use this palette. When I open it, it just makes me really happy to look at. So let me just swatch a couple of the shimmers here. A couple of them came broken, so I just had to repress them, but I mean, look at these. So beautiful. Love the looks that I came up with. In 3rd place is the Smoky Glam palette from Bella Beauty Bar. This is a larger palette. I do have a dedicated video. I believe I did 2 or 3 looks or something like that, and honestly, the looks with this palette are endless. I love the tones in here. I love the shimmer formula in here. Just the mattes blend beautifully, and this is definitely a great just go-to palette when it comes to all kinds of tones of neutral shades. I do feel like it could have been cut down to be a little bit smaller, but I do really just enjoy it. And this is the 2nd palette I've ever tried from them. So this is my 2nd experience with their formula, and so far I'm very, very impressed. In 2nd place is the Jewels and Gem palette from Odin's Eye. This color story is just so beautiful to me. It's so unique. I love the tones in here, specifically like these 3 shades together are just very intriguing to see in this palette. The shimmers are just so shiny and sparkly in here. Specifically, this shade right here seems like a newer kind of formula. It's silky smooth and so shiny and beautiful, very reflective as you could see. And I think I did 1 or 2 looks of this palette, and I just want to keep using it because again, I just love the color story. Every time I open this, I'm like, yep, this is such a unique and beautiful color story. So drum roll please. In 1st place is the Pastel Garden palette from Bella Beauty Bar. This is the very first palette I tried from them. Yes, it is a large palette, but it is so beautiful, so bright, so fun, full of beautiful shimmer shadows, some brighter mattes as well as some pastel mattes. When I first saw them sneak peeking this palette, I was immediately intrigued. And there's just so many makeup releases, and this one just really excited me from the moment I saw it. I was like, do I need another pastel palette, especially the size? No, but I got it anyways because I love having everything all in one place. So let me just swatch a couple of the shimmers. Gotta swatch Green Wizard because it is so beautiful. It came out a little chunky, but you can definitely smooth it out. Definitely like a topper-like kind of shadow. So stunning. Very wet looking. And then we have this one right here. Again, topper-like, but so shiny, so beautiful. Out of the 23 palettes, this is definitely one of the palettes that has just stayed top of mind in terms of what I want to use, what I want to reach for, how much fun and ease of use I had with the palette, and this is definitely one of them. I do think between the top 5, I could kind of switch them out depending on the day and how I'm feeling, but at the time I'm filming this, this is how I feel about the palette rankings. And let me know in the comments below if you're shocked by any of these placements of the palettes. Which palette did you think was going to be number 1? I would love to hear your thoughts. And that's everything for this video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, and thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you next time.